My name is Margaret Reynolds, and I was 67 when I discovered the truth, the kind of truth that unravels a whole life in seconds. We had just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. 40 years with Harold, a man I thought I knew, trusted, and had built a whole life beside. Friends envied our devotion. Our children, grown and living their own lives, often said we were their model for love that lasts. That morning, I still wore the golden bracelet he gave me the night before. To 40 more, he whispered, his voice shaking just enough to make me believe he meant it. But later that day, I would learn that while I was baking his favorite lemon cake and setting out candles, another woman, just 20 minutes away, was also celebrating 40 years with him. She had no idea about me either. I wish I could tell you, I screamed. I wish I could say I shattered every dish in the kitchen. But I didn't. I just sat down. And the world went silent. It was my granddaughter who unintentionally lit the match. "Grandma," she said, scrolling through her phone at the kitchen table, "isn't this Grandpa? He's in this picture with some people, look." She handed me the phone. It was a Facebook post, public and full of smiling faces at what looked like a backyard party. But there was Harold. My Harold, holding a baby, his arm wrapped comfortably around a woman who wasn't me. The caption read, "Celebrating 40 years with the most amazing man, father, and grandfather. Love you forever, Harold." My blood ran cold. The woman tagged was named Lena Thompson. I didn't know her. But she clearly knew my husband, intimately, deeply. There were comments from her grown children, calling him Dad. One even wrote, "Pops, you've always been our rock." My fingers trembled. I zoomed in. It wasn't just a look-alike. It was him. Same silver hair. Same old watch I'd bought him on our 25th anniversary. The one he claimed he'd lost last year. Suddenly I was looking at a man I no longer recognized. I confronted Harold that evening. Calm. Too calm. I showed him the photo without a word. He stared. Blinked. For a second, I saw a flicker of fear. Then came the lie, slippery and smooth. "That's an old friend. Just a joke. They call me Pops because I'm always grilling." I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just stared. "I know about Lena," I said softly. "I know about the other family." And that's when the mask cracked. He didn't deny it. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just sat down across from me like a man who'd been waiting 40 years to be caught. The days after the truth came out were eerily quiet. There were no shouting matches, no dishes thrown, no dramatic exits. Just silence. Harold slept in the guest room. I stayed in the master, surrounded by reminders of a life I suddenly realized had been built on lies. Every anniversary card, every framed photo, every memory of laughter, tainted. I couldn't even cry. I cooked dinner and set 2 plates, but I didn't eat. I left his plate on the table untouched. He never came to eat either. He walked around the house like a ghost. I watched him move in the yard, the same way I had watched him for years, only now I wondered what he'd been thinking all those times he said he loved me. Was it guilt? Or just routine? One night I asked him plainly, "How long, Harold?" He didn't look up from his hands. "Since before we were married." That was the night I finally cried. Not because he cheated. Not because he had another family. But because I realized I'd spent 40 years giving myself to a man who never gave himself to me. I drove to Lena Thompson's house. I needed to see it. 20 minutes from my home. A quaint cottage, rose bushes out front, kids' toys in the yard. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs. A whole other life, just down the road. I didn't knock. I sat in my car and watched her through the window. A woman in her 60s with soft gray curls, stirring soup at the stove. The warmth in the home stung me like a slap. Harold had built 2 lives, but only one looked like love. I wondered what he told her. Had she known about me? Had she been lied to too? That night, I searched for answers on Lena's Facebook page. Every post chipped away at my soul. There were birthdays with Harold in the frame, family vacations I was told he took with the guys, and photos of grandchildren, children I never knew he held. He was a father. Again. And he never told me. In the middle of all that heartbreak, I started remembering the girl I used to be before Harold. The young Margaret who dreamed of being a writer, who laughed with her whole body, who thought love was sacred and rare. I had dimmed myself for him. Over time, slowly, in pieces. Like a candle with too little wick left to burn. I thought of all the times he made me feel small. When he joked about my weight, when he rolled his eyes at my opinions, when he said not everything is about you whenever I cried. It wasn't just the other family. It was everything he took from me along the way. And still, I stayed. Like many women do. Because I thought staying made me good, faithful, strong. But now I saw clearly, I wasn't weak for loving him. But he was weak for betraying that love. Not emails. Not text messages. Letters. To Harold. To Lena. To my children. To myself. I poured my soul onto paper. Rage, grief, confusion. Memories both beautiful and brutal. I wrote about our first date and how I noticed even then that he didn't ask questions about me. I wrote about our wedding day and the promises that were broken before they were even made. I wrote about the nights I slept beside him, aching with loneliness he never noticed. I never intended to send them. But I needed to get it out. Because if I kept it in, I would rot from the inside out. Writing was the first thing I did for me. It reminded me, I still had a voice. He may have lied to me. But I could tell the truth to myself. I raised 3 children with Harold. Or rather, I raised them while Harold played the part of a husband and father in 2 different worlds. I wrestled with telling them. What would they think? Would they hate him? Would they blame me? One morning, I called them all home. We sat in the living room, Jason, my oldest, Clarissa, my middle child, and Emily, my youngest. Their eyes were worried before I even began. I have something to tell you, I said, voice steady. And it's going to change how you see your father. But I need you to hear it from me. Not from a rumor. Not from Facebook. And I told them everything. The other family. The other children. The 40 years of deception. The silence. The lies. Jason stood in shock, fists clenched. Clarissa sobbed. Emily stared at the floor for a long time before whispering, he used to call me his princess. Was she his princess too? That question wrecked me. But I was glad I told them. Because they deserved to know the truth, just as I had. We cried together. We sat in that truth together. And for once, it wasn't just me carrying the weight. It took me 3 weeks to gather the courage. I rang Lena Thompson's doorbell. She answered with a soft smile and a curious tilt of the head. Can I help you? I think we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. It's about Harold. Her face changed instantly. Not confusion. Recognition. fear, shame. She stepped aside, and I walked into her home. We sat at her kitchen table. The same table I'd seen in her photos. She offered tea, and I declined. "I'm Margaret," I said. "Harold's wife. The one he's been married to for 40 years. She didn't deny it. Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't know either. "He lied to her too. He told me you passed away, years ago," she whispered. I felt like the air was being pulled out of my lungs. That night, two broken women sat across from each other, sharing heartbreak over the same man. And somehow, instead of hating her, I felt sorry for her, and for myself. We were both victims of his performance. We were both robbed. A few days after meeting Lena, I received a message. "Hi. I think you might be my dad's wife. My name is Marcus." He was one of Harold's children, from Lena's side. I sat in silence reading his words. He wasn't angry. He was kind. Thoughtful. Heartbroken, just like us. He told me Harold had always been distant. There, but not really there. That they always sensed something wasn't quite right. We agreed to meet. He looked just like Harold did in his 30s. He apologized to me, the stranger his father betrayed. And somehow, in the strangest twist, I found comfort in this son I never knew existed. The legacy of deception had spread further than I imagined. But truth was now beginning to light candles in the dark. I called a lawyer. A woman named Deborah, who was known for being ruthless with cheating husbands. When Harold was served the papers, he looked stunned, like this wasn't his ending. Like I was the one being unreasonable. He didn't speak a word to me for 3 days. Then, he tried to apologize. "I was young," he said. "I didn't know how to choose." "You didn't have to choose," I replied. "You had to tell the truth." He begged. He offered me more of our retirement. He said he'd end things with Lena. But it was too late. This wasn't about money. This was about respect, dignity, and reclaiming the years he stole from me. I gathered everything: photos, letters, cards, the sweater he loved, and the whiskey glasses from our 30th anniversary. I lit a fire pit in the backyard and fed the flames slowly, one memory at a time. I wept, but not because I missed him. I wept because I was finally letting go. Letting go of the version of me who tolerated neglect. Letting go of the lie that a woman must suffer quietly to be worthy. I watched the smoke curl into the stars and whispered, "You don't get to own me anymore." That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years. Word spread. In a small town, it always does. Women from church approached me. Quietly. Gently. And they told me their stories. He used to say I wasn't enough too. My husband left me for another woman when I turned 60. I know what it feels like to be invisible in your own home. I wasn't alone. And when I spoke, others listened. Not with pity, but with recognition. Pain makes us sisters. Truth makes us powerful. One evening, my granddaughter Olivia asked, "Grandma, do you still love him?" I thought long and hard. "I loved who I thought he was," I answered. "But not who he truly is." She nodded. "I think that's really brave." I hugged her tight. In her innocence, she reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That love can heal too. Not the romantic kind. The kind that stays, listens, and sees you. The kind I was finally learning to give myself. 3 months after my divorce, Lena called. "I left him," she said quietly. I couldn't stay, not after knowing what he did to both of us. I didn't know what to say. I've spent years thinking I had a whole man, she said, her voice shaking. Turns out I only had half of one. We laughed. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes, laughter is all you have when your soul is exhausted from crying. We met for coffee. Not as rivals. As women who survived the same war. She said, "It's strange, isn't it? We gave him everything. And he still gave us only crumbs." "Yes," I said, "but look at us now. We're feasting on our freedom." I sat down and wrote a letter to the 25-year-old version of me. Dear Margaret. He will charm you. He will seem like everything you dreamed of. But listen closely, to the silences between his words. To the way your heart aches at night. Don't ignore it. You are not crazy. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. And when you finally walk away, you will become someone he can never touch again. Love. The you who survived. I met his daughter, from Lena's family, at the grocery store. She introduced herself shyly. "I'm sorry about everything," she said. "He hurt all of us." And for the first time in this mess, I saw her not as a product of betrayal, but as another innocent caught in the storm. We talked. We shared photos. She called me Margaret with a tenderness I didn't expect. She even asked, "Do you think we could still get to know each other?" I said yes. Because the sins of our fathers shouldn't determine the bonds we create. I changed my name legally. Not to something brand new, but back to my maiden name, the name before Harold, before the lies, before I was molded into someone else's image. Margaret Elaine Wexler. It felt like coming home to myself. I ordered new checks, a new ID, and updated my mailbox. A small act. But it felt like revolution. I took a solo trip. To the mountains. I hiked trails alone, cooked over a small fire, and stared at the stars until I forgot his face. I read poetry. I wrote in my journal. I laughed when birds landed near me, like I was finally a safe place. For the first time in decades, I felt whole. Not because someone loved me, but because I finally loved myself. I tell my story now. To women in support groups. To girls at the shelter. To grandmothers who think it's too late to start over. I tell them. You are not what he did to you. You are not the years you lost. You are not too old to begin again. I tell them that heartbreak doesn't mean the end of your story, sometimes, it's just the middle. Because the real ending is when you reclaim your voice. And I did. I am Margaret Reynolds. I am 72 years old. And I have never felt more alive. Thanks for listening. Like this video and subscribe for more inspirational stories.